Hi, my name is Jessica, and this incident happened to me when I was a little girl. For some backstory, I had just moved to Denver, Colorado with my parents in December 2007. I was about 7 years old at the time when this incident happened, and to this day still remember it like it was yesterday. When we moved into our new home, we were all excited to get away from the chaotic California lifestyle and into a more quiet suburban Denver lifestyle. The neighbors were really nice, especially Mrs. Davis. Mrs. Davis was a sweet old woman who lived two houses from us. She was the first to welcome us into the neighborhood and brought us a collection full of desserts. She always smelt like apple pie and was seemingly like a grandma figure. Sadly, Mrs. Davis' husband had passed away a few years ago, so she was really lonely in that house as her children lived far away. Mrs. Davis always insisted that I come explore her home and to see all the unique treasures in it. I'd always want to, but my parents said no, as they did not want me bothering Mrs. Davis all the time. Everything felt perfect until certain things started to feel off with Mrs. Davis. It all started a few months after we moved in. Mrs. Davis started insisting that we all go and visit her home. After some persuasion, my parents caved in and we decided to go and visit her. When we arrived at her home, we noticed that something was off with the home. From the outside, it looked like a home a grandma would have. However, when she invited us in, it looked really weird. There was a lot of bags and plastic wrapping covering a lot of things. My parents knew something was weird, but me, my little brain could not get around the idea that Mrs. Davis was anything but a lovable grandma figure. We walked into her kitchen where it smelt like cookies. We sat down and ate some of her cookies while she poured coffee for my parents. Everything seemed to be going well until I had to go to the bathroom. Mrs. Davis told me where it was, and I went to go and use it. However, while I was leaving the bathroom, I noticed a strange odor that smelt really bad. At the time, I didn't know what it was, but all I knew was that it smelt really bad. I elected to tell my parents, but thought that might be rude to say that. My parents were talking to Mrs. Davis about how quiet it was and how they loved living here. They thought it was a great decision for them to have moved here. Everything was normal until that same smell now filled the kitchen. My parents and Mrs. Davis noticed it. My dad said, "What's that smell? It smells like a dead animal." Mrs. Davis now looked a little panicked and kind of started pushing us out the door. My dad decided we would leave, but that he had to use the bathroom real quick. When my dad got out of the bathroom, he had a skin color of pale white with a face of shock and horror. He quickly said that we had to get home and tried to not look suspicious. My parents were hush-hush until we got home. My mother went upstairs with me to my room while my dad was on the phone with the police. I couldn't hear anything, but I heard my dad mentioning something about a dead body in the tub and a horrific smell in the home. Then there was a sharp scraping noise on the front door as it sounded like someone was trying to stab the door. My dad was yelling at Mrs. Davis to go away and that the police were on their way. She kept screaming she didn't do it and that she was innocent while trying to break in. The police arrived a few minutes later and arrested Mrs. Davis swiftly. My dad told the police all he knew while we were still upstairs. I fell asleep shortly after the police left, and the next morning, my parents decided to tell me the truth. My dad said that I was a big girl and I could handle the news. My dad told me that the smell was a dead body in the bathtub and that he saw it while he was leaving the bathroom. He said the police told him that it was Mr. Davis and that Mrs. Davis had been trying to hide the body, but due to her declining memory had forgotten where it was. My parents later found out a few days later and told me that Mrs. Davis had killed her husband due to his huge life insurance policy and that he had cheated on her with a younger woman. She killed him out of anger by poisoning him with cyanide in a tea. I was completely shocked. The woman who made me cookies was a secret murderer. It really damaged my little brain that old people were sweet and caring about everyone. Now, in this current day, I still don't feel like I can get close with an old person, unfortunately, due to the traumatic event I suffered as a kid. I still to this day can never get over the sweet woman making desserts was a cold-blooded killer. This story happened to me when I was a young adult venturing on my own for the first time without the comfort of my parents. I had been living in my new home for a few years without hardly any incidents. My neighbors were nice and there was no problems in the neighborhood. However, that all changed when Jeff moved in. The house across from me had been completely empty for a few years as due to the rising house costs, the old couple who had lived there unfortunately had to foreclose their home. When Jeff moved in across the street, I went over to introduce myself, and I could tell something was already off about the guy. He had very short answers to all my questions, and was not very warm and friendly to me. He also surprisingly did not have that many things on him. I thought it was kind of weird that he had such little things for that big of a house. He quickly went inside his home, and I decided to walk back to my house, still in shock about the whole situation. I couldn't get my mind off of Jeff the rest of the day. Who was he? Why was he acting so strange? What was he hiding? I decided that it would be best to just leave him alone. I thought maybe he was just not good with people and did not like to talk to people. Later that night, I was awoken by the sound of car doors opening and closing. I got up and saw multiple cars parked in front of Jeff's house. At first, I thought maybe his family came over to visit, but when I looked out the window again, I noticed they were all men dressed in dark clothing, and it looked really suspicious. Looking back, I should have called the cops, but I really didn't want to start problems with this guy, especially if situation was a whole nothing burger. I went back to sleep, and nothing happened the rest of the night. I woke up the next morning to see all the cars gone except for Jeff's. I thought it was really strange, but I told myself it was probably just his friends. I got ready for work, and nothing of importance happened the rest of the day. When I got home, I saw Jeff just watering his front driveway. I decided to go talk to him again, but I was again met with short one-word answers to all of my questions. He also was suspiciously looking around like he was looking out for something or someone. I could tell something was really off about this guy, but I wanted to believe he was just a non-sociable person. I went home and did all my nightly routines without much of incident happening. When I was getting ready for bed, I once again heard car doors opening and closing. I looked out my window and again I saw the same men getting out of the cars and going to Jeff's home. I was confused on why these men were here and what do they want with Jeff. One of the men turned around and pointed at me in the window. I quickly closed the curtain and was starting to have a bit of a panic attack. What do those men want? Why are they here? Who is this Jeff guy? However, when I opened the curtains, I saw no one, and it seemed like they went inside Jeff's house. I stayed up for a bit, but eventually fell asleep. I was awoken the next morning by a sharp knock on my front door. I got up and went to answer it and saw it was Jeff. He told me, "Do not stare at my friends. They don't like being watched, and they do not like nosy neighbors." I told him that this was a safe neighborhood and that no one was entitled to suspicious activity. He replied, "Trust me, you don't want problems." He left and I slammed the door behind him. I couldn't believe this guy. I thought about calling the police, but foolishly decided against it. I kept trying to rationalize that the guy just doesn't want his business being watched. I decided that if anything suspicious happens tonight, I would call the police. I went to work, but I couldn't focus on because I kept thinking about all the weird things going on with Jeff. I knew something was going on, but I had no proof of it yet. I got home, and this time I decided I was going to camp out by my window and wait for the guys to show up. It was about midnight when I heard the familiar car doors opening and closing. This time, though, I heard what sounded like a muffled cry of a woman. I looked out my curtain and saw them holding the woman and escorting her in the home. This time I knew something was wrong, and I had to act quickly. I quickly dialed 911 on my phone and told the operator what was going on across the street. I then heard shouting from Jeff's house while I was still on the phone with the operator. I didn't know what was going on, but I knew it was bad. The operator warned me to not make any contact as the men could be dangerous. I then heard a popping sound from across at Jeff's house. The police arrived seconds later and swarmed the place. Unfortunately, this story does not have a happy ending. When the police arrived, they arrested the men, but the woman was already dead. The men shot her to death. It turns out that Jeff had recently been divorced by his ex-wife, which was the woman. Out of jealousy of her moving on, he rented the house across from me and planned to murder her and burn the house down to conceal the crime. I was so disgusted, and even more so at myself because had I reacted sooner, the woman would have been alive. It's been 2 years since then, and I still have not gotten over how I may have been able to save the woman and not let her die due to my unwillingness to report. I have been seeing a therapist and taking depression medication for now to see if I can get my life back, but I highly doubt it. And to Jeff, I hope you rot for the rest of your life. This story takes place when I was 15 years old, moving with my parents to a brand new state. My parents and I had moved to Alabama when my dad had gotten a new job. This move was really hard for me as I had left my entire life and friends behind in my old home. I was stunned when my parents told me we were moving, and I didn't want to leave my old home. My parents reassured me that I would make new friends and be able to rebuild my life. I definitely felt like it was the end of the world. We packed up and moved to our new home in a matter of a few days. When we arrived at our new home, I was immediately in shock of how brand new the house was and how clean the neighborhood was. We moved all of our things into our new home and began to start our brand new lives. After a couple of days, our neighbors began to come over and introduce themselves to us. Everyone was nice and cordial except for one old man named Gary. Mr. Gary came over to our house and he did not seem to like me at all. He said to me that he did not like teenagers and that we were nothing but trouble. However, he was being all fake and nice with my parents. I did not like Mr. Gary, and I felt like he and I were going to have some serious problems. After he left, I told my parents about what he said to me, and they told me not to worry about it. He's just an old lonely man who did not have any children, and that just to leave him alone. I decided to do what my parents told me and just ignore him as much as I could. The only problem was that Mr. Gary lived right next door to us. I knew it was only a matter of time before we crossed paths again. Unfortunately, this was only the beginning of the problems we would have with Mr. Gary. About a week after meeting Mr. Gary, I've noticed that any time I would walk by his house while on my way to and from school, he would stare at me through the window the entire time. This completely creeped me out, but I heeded to my parents' wishes and I left him alone. Then, one night, about midnight, I was awoken by the sound of something hitting my window. I got up to see Mr. Gary just standing outside my house in the front lawn. I freaked out and called my parents, but when they came into my room, he had already left. When I told them who was standing outside, they were surprised but told me they would talk to Mr. Gary in the morning. The next morning came and I went downstairs to find my parents making breakfast. They told me they went over and talked to Mr. Gary, and he told them that he did not remember anything and that he is known to sleepwalk. I told him that it was not true because Mr. Gary threw something at my window. You can't do that if you're sleepwalking. My parents reassured me that nothing would happen. They said that they will install a security system and cameras soon if anything else happens. I finished breakfast and left to go to school. When I was walking by Mr. Gary's house, I noticed he was still standing in that same upstairs window, but now was creepily smiling at me as I walked by. There was no way he was sleepwalking. That's not possible. I hardly concentrated at school. My mind was completely being bombarded by the intentions of Mr. Gary. When I left school and walked back home, I got a nervous feeling as I was approaching Mr. Gary's home. I looked at the upstairs window, but to my surprise, he was not there. I figured that maybe he was asleep or was busy for once. I came home, and nothing of importance or out of the ordinary happened for the rest of the day. I went to sleep after finishing my essay, but I was awoken again by a large thud against my window. I got up and looked out my window to see that no one was there. I felt relieved and told myself it was probably just a branch or something. However, I heard a loud thud again on my window, and this time I got up and sprinted to my window and came face to face with Mr. Gary. I screamed as he tried to open my window, but luckily it was locked. My parents rushed in and saw him and immediately saw Mr. Gary and told him that they were calling the cops and to get off our property. Mr. Gary attempted to break the window using the butt of a hunting knife. We quickly ran out of the room and into my parents' room and locked the door. My parents called the police as Mr. Gary kept struggling to break the window. Luckily, the police came quickly and caught Mr. Gary as he was trying to make a run for it. The police came and asked us questions about Mr. Gary, and a patrol car stayed in front of our home the rest of the night. The next day, we got a call from the police that Mr. Gary was deemed to be insane and was sent to a psych ward. The police said that he had just been mumbling incoherent words, and it turns out that he had not been taking his meds the last few weeks. So now he is under the careful supervision of someone who can get him help. Luckily, this ended up not ruining my time in my new home as I was able to move on and make friends and enjoy my life. Hi, it's me, Mr. Horror Story. I hope you enjoy our awesome Walmart horror stories today. These were fun to make, and I always enjoy making content to entertain you guys.
I hope you guys like, comment, subscribe, and continue to show your support in watching these videos all the way until the end. I really truly appreciate every single view and subscriber I get. Please continue to share your feedback with me on things you think could help improve my videos or things you would like to see, and further recommendations is always, always appreciative. Thank you very much. Mr. Horror Story out.